he actually wanted it or not. What mattered to me was the fact that Joseph was involving himself with extremely dangerous people. I didn't believe one bit that this WX person actually would do something like this. I thought WX was just a liar trying to get money off of people. Even still, someone that desperate for money was dangerous, and I did not want to be a part of it anymore. So that night, before anyone else woke up, I got my shoes on and left Joseph's home. Walking the few blocks back to my house, back to actual safety and sanity. I'd never felt so sick before. In the morning, I had several texts from Joseph, who was a bit upset that I had ditched out on him and didn't even tell him. But I was going to be straight with Joseph this time. I told him I read the chat log on his laptop and that I didn't want to hang around with someone like him anymore. He tried to laugh it off, say that it was just a joke. I told him even if it was too far. Again. Joseph and I were no longer friends. I avoided him at school. I blocked his number. I tried to move on. But when I did catch a glimpse of Joseph across the room or hallway, he wore the most frightening expression. He was more mad than I'd ever seen him before. And to be honest, I was afraid of him for a while. Afraid that he'd do something to get back at me. And it turns out I was right to be afraid. But it was not what I was expecting. One day I walked home alone from school as usual. I entered through the side of the house, made myself a sandwich, then went out the front door as I always did to check the mail. There I saw a package at our doorstep. It was small and unmarked, appearing to have been hand-delivered and not at all sent through the post office. I brought it inside and quickly opened it, my curiosity driving me. There was a ton of toilet paper which had been used as packing paper, and underneath that there was a very thick and compact ball of toilet paper. As there was nothing else in the box, I assumed that the object I was looking for was wrapped up in this little white ball. As I unwrapped it, I felt a sickening feeling rising up in my stomach. There were red blotches on the toilet paper that grew more common and apparent the more I unraveled the ball. Then, it all happened at once. The ball came to an end, and the momentum of it unraveling caused something thin and long to fall out, slapping itself sickeningly on the kitchen counter. I screamed. It was a finger. I ran to the neighbor's house and called the cops. Soon my parents were there and had me in their arms. I was beginning to feel okay again, but far from normal. I wanted to know whose finger that was. I had a really bad feeling it was Mr. Pickery's finger, that it was Joseph's way of showing me just how real the dark web conversation had been, to get back at me. It turns out it wasn't Mr. Pickery's, though. Actually, it was Joseph's finger. Being upset by me calling off our friendship like that, and having stayed up all night drinking his dad's booze while chatting with more people on the dark web, who ridiculed him and taunted him into actually performing his bluff, Joseph did it. Joseph had taken it off of himself. Then he put it in a box when he was sober and delivered it right to my front door. Joseph was badly messed up in the head. They were able to reattach his finger, sure, but he lost 40% of its feeling, and Joseph was then locked up in a mental institution until he was 20. I was very close to Joseph, having been desperate for a friend, but sometimes being alone is better, safer. If Joseph was messed up enough to be willing to harm himself like that, just to freak me out, there's no telling what else he'd be capable of doing. I hope I never see him again. whispering something that I could not hear. Being very curious, turned my Number 1. There are dangerous things online. Things that will change your life forever. This world, there are dangerous things online. Things that will change your life forever. This world is a strange one. They say that we don't see most of the actual internet. That the websites pulled up by search engines don't have access to something called the dark web. It's an online underworld only accessible. Deep Web Creep by Jaden J. My after-school life was, to put it simply, boring. As soon as I got my first laptop when I was 13, my life got a whole lot more interesting and brighter. To fill the blank span of time from when I got home from school to when I went to bed, I began exploring all corners of gaming and the internet, with the help of my older brother. He showed me all the basic forms of entertainment, and I got started. After a while, however, I began hearing of something known to many as the deep web. After hours of failed attempts on top of failed attempts to access this forbidden place, I once more sought the help of my older brother, Oscar. My persistent begging finally got to him, and he decided to let me mess around on it a little, not really believing the disturbing aspects of it. So he figured I'd be safe. The only condition was that it would be on his computer, and he'd be supervising me at all times. So he set me up, opened up all the right browsers, and let me go wild. I browsed Silk Road for a while, looking at firearms. I then stumbled upon a chat room. Hyped with all the possibilities of pranks in mind, I clicked a link. Many of the chats were harmless fun. Then, after one more stranger left, tired of my antics, I met someone who called himself Charlie. The following conversation ensued. "Hey, who am I talking to?" The new message popped up. Quickly, I respond with the usual. "Female, 13. Who are you, may I ask?" After a minute or two of more probing, I finally got out that he was a male, and he was in his 40s. I tried to play my usual prank gibberish, but he reacted differently than the other people. Instead of leaving, he turned the conversation. "Well, what are you on a place like this for?" At this, my brother took over the conversation for me, continuing to try to troll him with me. But being a teenager, he couldn't resist making it, intimate is the right word. He thought it'd be funny to tease this 40-year-old pervert. The guy replied, "I'm impressed that you're not weirded out by older men. But I'm sure if I showed you what I want you to do to me, you'd be pretty creeped out." I was now feeling uncomfortable with the situation, so I let my brother take the reins. "No, I can handle it," my brother replied, assuming my guise as a 13-year-old girl to this 40-year-old man. My brother laughed as he sent the message, and a couple of minutes later a file appeared in the chat. I looked at Oscar in hesitation, but he clicked on it anyway. That was one of the biggest mistakes I've witnessed to date. A second later, a picture popped up. Now, I won't go into too much detail of what the picture was, but it involved a girl who was around 7, doing something that a girl that age should never have been doing. She looked scared, small, and frail. That was all I was able to deduce before my brother gagged and closed the file with haste. He closed every single tab that had something to do with the deep web. After a moment of awful silence, I managed to get out. Was that real, Oscar? He didn't give me an answer, instead telling me that I should never go on the deep web again, with or without him. It was a place that we should not be. I look back today and wish we could have done something else, or at least have taken a picture of what we witnessed and took it to the police. But we were too scared, horrified, and we felt guilty. I always think back to that little girl and wonder if I could have made a difference in her life. I try not to dwell on it too much, but that's difficult whenever I remember her scared eyes and small frame. I'm sorry. Urban Subworld by Sean J. One day after school, my friends and I met up with my older brother. We often do this outside of McDonald's near our house. He was excited to tell us about his experience with the deep web. We met up at a friend's house, and my brother showed us how to get onto the deep web, which we nicknamed the Void. He was excited, rummaging through pages of boring content, finding a bunch of mystery boxes for sale. We didn't believe the hype like he did. Not knowing the consequences, we went ahead and bought one of them. A week passed by until the box finally arrived. It was so heavily wrapped, like some sort of prank, that it took us half an hour just to open it. That right there had us doubting. Finally opening it, my friend Dave started emptying the box one item at a time. There were some weird things like doll heads with ketchup on them and for some reason a badly wrapped razor. Dave discarded this, but the other 3 friends went off saying it was too weird. We shouldn't have messed with the dark web. I wish I had listened to them, but I was still skeptical. This just appeared to be a box of junk. But at the bottom of the box was something different. A small black square with one green LED light. I noticed it and pointed it out to Dave. It was superglued to the inside of the box, and we had trouble prying it off. Eventually, we got it off, though. We brought it over to the laptop, typed in the model number that was on the back of it, and trying to research any information we could dig up on it. What we found was that it was a GPS tracking device, the kind that was typically used for cars when they're sold from used car dealerships, except this one had a battery inside, so it did not require an external one. When we realized that the box was being tracked and that the tracker was now inside our home, we began to freak out. We tried to turn it off, tried to smash it, tried to burn it, but despite the external plastic packaging now being torn to shreds, basically, the light was still on. Desperate and scared and feeling a little bit guilty, we took the tracker over to the neighbor's house and threw it in their backyard. Then we ran away, back to Dave's. We stayed up, looking out of windows, waiting for someone to drive by or pull up, waiting for our inevitable demise. But so far, nothing has happened. Though a couple of men did approach the house just the other day. Apparently, they were asking Dave's parents about Dave himself, saying that they wanted to talk to him. So far, nothing else has happened, and we haven't told anyone about the experience. We figured we'd get in a lot of trouble if our parents knew, so we had to keep it quiet. Though I know now, we could have gotten ourselves hurt, or worse. Dark Web Teacher by Isabel.